My mother-in-law told the hall coordinator I didn't get a say in my own daughter's quinceañera because I hadn't grown up with the tradition, so it wasn't really mine to plan. She didn't know I'd been saving every message she'd sent since the invitations went out, in a folder on my phone, and then, when the folder got too long to scroll through, in an actual shoebox on the top shelf of our closet. It started the way these things always start with Patricia, which is to say it started as a favor I never asked for. Patricia had run the events side of her family's restaurant for 26 years, and half the town had either worked a shift for her, owed her a wedding discount, or sent a kid through her nephew's mariachi group. She was not used to a party in this family happening without her name on the program. The first message came 6 days after we mailed the save the dates. A screenshot of a banquet hall's booking calendar, already filled in for the date we'd chosen under a different host name. I took the liberty of locking this in since you two seemed slow to move, it said. I hadn't told her which hall we were even considering. She'd gotten it from my husband Marco's cousin, who tends bar there on weekends, and mentioned it at a family dinner I wasn't at. I told Marco it was probably just her being excited. He agreed fast, the way he always agreed fast when it meant not having a longer conversation about his mother, and I let it go. I didn't argue with Patricia. I took a screenshot instead and made a folder, and named it Sophia's 15, because I already had a feeling I'd need it before the year was out. By the second month the pattern had a rhythm to it. Patricia would make a decision on her own, present it to the family as already handled, and route it through someone who wasn't me. She told the florist Sophia wanted the same magenta and gold Patricia had used at her own quinceañera in 1987, when Sophia and I had picked lavender together from a swatch book at my kitchen table. She told my sister-in-law, at a lunch neither Sophia nor I was invited to, that the guest count was finalized at 240 more than the hall could legally seat. She told the DJ, calling from her own number and introducing herself as the grandmother in charge, that the Court of Honor's entrance song had been changed. I found out because the DJ called me to confirm the swap, sounding confused, since I'd emailed him a full run sheet 2 weeks earlier with a different song entirely. I thanked him, told him to follow what I'd sent, and added the call to the folder. Screenshot of my run sheet. Screenshot of his confused text. Timestamped the way I'd started timestamping everything. Marco kept saying the same two things whenever I brought it up. She means well. She just wants to feel included. I noticed he said it a little faster every time, like he wanted the conversation finished before it really began. I stopped pushing and kept documenting instead, because I've learned that people who genuinely mean well don't usually mind being asked to prove it, and people who don't mean well always seem to. The Court of Honor was the fourth incident, not the first, but it's the one that made me sit down and actually think about what I wanted to do with that shoebox. Sophia had chosen her best friend Ruby, who she'd known since kindergarten, to walk in as her first dama. Patricia quietly swapped Ruby out of the formation chart and replaced her with the daughter of Patricia's goddaughter, a girl Sophia had met exactly once at a christening 4 years earlier. When I asked why, Patricia said the formation needed, quote, girls who actually understood the tradition properly, since Ruby wasn't Mexican and might not know the steps. Ruby had been taking the waltz lessons with Sophia every Tuesday since March. The goddaughter's daughter had never set foot in the studio. I put Ruby back on the chart myself, in the shared planning spreadsheet, and left a note. Ruby is Sophia's chosen sister. She's staying, Patricia replied within 6 minutes, saying she'd only been trying to help since I clearly didn't understand how these traditions actually worked, being, and I am quoting this exactly, new to the culture. I had been coming to this family's Christmas Eve dinner for 11 years before Marco and I got married. I screenshotted her reply twice, in case the first one didn't save, which has never once been a real concern of mine before or since. I just wanted to be certain. 3 weeks later came the dress. Not Sophia's dress, which we'd already ordered, quietly, with only my mother and Sophia's Aunt Delia in the loop, specifically because of what had happened with the court of honor. Patricia had taken Sophia to a boutique 2 towns over, under the story that she wanted to treat her granddaughter to a fitting for fun, and had a seamstress there begin alterations on a completely different dress, in Patricia's preferred magenta, using Sophia's exact measurements, which Patricia had pulled from an old school uniform order without asking anyone. When the boutique called our house to confirm a deposit, thinking they were speaking to the paying customer, I learned 2 things in the same phone call: that the dress existed, and that Patricia had told the seamstress on record that I was, quote, not really involved in the planning, more of a guest at this point. I asked the seamstress to read me exactly what had been said, and she did, slowly, clearly a little uncomfortable, and I wrote it down word for word and put it in the shoebox with the date. I cancelled the second dress myself, called the boutique directly, and paid the deposit refund fee out of my own account so there'd be no argument about whose money had been on the line. I did not tell Patricia I'd done it. I wanted to see how long it would take her to notice, and what she'd say when she did. It took 11 days. She noticed at the final fitting, when the seamstress mentioned the cancellation, and Patricia called me that evening using a tone I hadn't heard from her before, somewhere between wounded and furious, saying I had humiliated her in front of people she'd known for 30 years, and that after everything she'd done for this family, this was how I chose to repay her. I asked her, calmly, what exactly she felt she'd done for this family regarding a dress no one had asked her to order. She hung up. I wrote the call down to time, date, and as close to a direct quote as I could manage from memory, and read it back to Marco that night so there'd be a witness besides me. The invitations were the 5th incident, and the one that finally moved Marco off the fence. We had ordered 200 invitations with both our names as hosts, Sophia's name centered above ours, exactly the way Sophia wanted it. Patricia had gone to the same print shop, using a copy of our guest list she'd gotten from Delia, and ordered a second run listing herself as primary host, with our names in smaller type beneath the line that read, hosted with the loving support of the family. She mailed all 200 of them herself, 3 days before our original batch went out, so that most of the guest list received her version first. We found out when Marco's own uncle called to ask which invitation was correct, since he'd received one that made it sound like Patricia was throwing the party and we were helping out. Marco took that call. I watched his face change while he listened, and for the first time in 5 months he didn't say she means well. He said, "Give me a minute," and walked outside, and when he came back in he asked me to show him the folder. All of it. Every screenshot, every timestamp, going back to the banquet hall. We didn't confront her that night. I'd learned by then that confronting Patricia in private got you an apology that lasted exactly as long as the conversation, followed by the same pattern resuming within a week, always through someone who wasn't me. What Patricia responded to was an audience, because an audience was the only thing she'd ever actually performed for. So Marco and I made a decision together, the first real decision we'd made together about this party in months, and we let the 6th incident happen without stopping it, because it was going to be the last one. Patricia had asked the hall coordinator, weeks earlier, to schedule a padrinos toast near the end of the night, a tradition where the godparents and close family speak about the meaning behind the day. She had quietly arranged to be the one giving it, in place of Sophia's actual madrina, my sister Alina, who Sophia had chosen herself the year before. Patricia planned it as a surprise, the coordinator later told me, apologetically, once she understood what had actually been happening. Patricia intended to stand up in front of 200 guests and speak about raising Sophia's values, framing herself as the steady hand behind the girl Sophia had become, while I stood by as, in her private words to the coordinator, essentially a guest at this point. We let her plan it. We let the night happen almost exactly as Patricia had arranged. The hall she'd tried to rebook, the flowers she'd tried to recolor, the court she tried to rearrange, every one of them quietly restored to what Sophia had actually chosen weeks before Patricia ever touched them, so that by the night of the party there was no trace of her interference left for the guests to see, only the party Sophia wanted, looking effortless. When the coordinator called Patricia up for the padrinos toast, she rose with a folded card in her hand and a look on her face like she'd been waiting months for this exact moment, which she had. She got 4 sentences in, something about tradition, about knowing what a family needs before it knows how to ask, about being the one who truly understood what this day required. That was when Alina, exactly as we'd planned, gently took the microphone for the Madrina's toast that had been hers on the program the entire time, thanked Patricia for her enthusiasm, and then read, in a warm, steady voice, from a single printed page pulled from a plain manila folder, a short, factual timeline. The banquet hall booked under someone else's name. The florist told the wrong colors. The court of honor quietly rearranged and quietly restored. The seamstress's exact words about who was and wasn't really involved. Elena didn't editorialize. She didn't need to. She read it the way you'd read a schedule, flat and clear, and then she looked up and said that everyone in the room had clearly seen tonight how much love had gone into this party, and that love, in this family, had turned out to look like Sophia's mother quietly fixing everything her grandmother tried to take, without ever once making it Sophia's problem. Then she raised her glass to Sophia, and the room, after one long beat of silence, followed her. Patricia sat down without finishing her toast. She left before the last dance, which was fine because the last dance had never been about her. Sophia danced it with her father, in the dress she'd actually chosen, under lights the color she'd actually picked, surrounded by the court of honor she'd actually built with her best friends, and if she noticed her grandmother's empty chair at all, she never once let it show on her face. The shoebox is still on the top shelf of our closet. I haven't decided whether to keep it or not. Marco thinks we should, in case there's ever a next time, and knowing his mother, there probably will be. I think he's right, though I hope, for all our sakes, that the folder stays exactly as short as it is tonight. Some traditions are worth keeping. Keeping the receipts turned out, this year, to be one of